Okay, a few of you have asked about a game that sometimes appears in the background of my videos sitting on the shelf, and that game is Leyte Gulf, Armada in the Pacific. But this game is not a commercially produced game. It's actually a variant that appeared in the Avalon Hill General Magazine, September-October 73, Volume 10, Number 3. It was a several-page article on the campaign and Battle of Leyte Gulf. And in it, the author, I don't know who the author was, I think it was uncredited, shows you how you could make a Leyte Gulf game with the map, and he gave you the hit record chart and all the information to play the game. So of course it's really using the Midway system. Midway is a game I bought back in 1969, and we played the devil out of it, making variants of it, and I just love this old game. So I just had to try making this variant. Before showing you the variant, I'll show you a couple of the books, early books I bought a while ago. This is an older work, Battle of Leyte Gulf by Edwin Hoyt. I think it was written in the 70s. There's the Ballantyne's Illustrated History, had an episode on Leyte Gulf, and it was pretty comprehensive. Of course, I got another one on the Japanese High Seas Fleet. It's another good one. And this Imperial Japanese Navy by Paul Dull. It's also another good reference work. And of course, Zero Fighter, with an introduction by the famous Japanese ace Saburo Sakai. Now, Leyte Gulf was one of the largest naval air battles in history in terms of number of men engaged and the number of planes engaged and the number of vessels. It's a big one. So I'll show you what I did. I'll show you some of the parts. Let me lay out the maps first, and we'll get a better overview of what the game is all about. Okay, here we are looking at the search boards, and the playing area is so large I can't even get it all in one shot, so I'll just have to show this to you in sections. Of course, one player would have his own search board, just like in the Midway game. Each player has their own search board. And I made up this little wee chart where you the charts you need to play the game face you, and I've got charts on the other side, of course, for the other player, just like in the original game. So you'll be moving your forces on this board, and your opponent will not know where your forces are. As in the original game, you're going to search for them by calling out areas and zones. So I don't know, it was an elegant system. I thought it was really neat, and it really is neat for Leyte Gulf, because you've got a lot of land areas here, and you've got a lot of land-based air power, which I thought was neat. I made up these task force sheets. I think they're nice and colorful. There's something about the old-fashioned artwork of the 60s I like. It's simple and it's clean. I really like that. I think a lot of the new artwork there, sometimes they go all out and the counters look very busy. Now we're looking at it upside down, but you can see I've done the same for the US task forces there. Over to the right, we've got the Battleboard. If you get into surface combat, that's where you're going to fight it out. Or if you get into air versus surface combat, that's where you're going to fight it out. Now this is a big battle, as I mentioned. You got a lot of ships and a lot of airplanes. Let's take a look at some of these counters. Now we'll zoom in closer in a moment, but just to show you the number of counters you have to make. We even have to make some new kinds of counters in this game. They introduce bombers with the B, mainly land-based, and K for the kamikazes. They're in. And of course the Americans have the standard fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. And you've got the search counters here. And I decided to fancy up the overhead silhouettes, so I did research on the ships and borrowed graphics from computer games or whatever I could get, and I made up these Battleboard counters. And I even included some submarine flotillas, I think in groups of 2. There's the Blackfin and the Bream. Anyway, let's take a closer look at the counters. Okay, there's not much to look at with the air counters. They're pretty basic. Of course, the Americans have their 3 main types: dive bombers, fighters, and torpedo bombers. And the Japanese have the dive bombers, fighters. They have bombers, land-based mainly, and the kamikaze. Interesting to note that by this time of the war, there are virtually no Japanese torpedo bombers. In fact, by this stage of the war, the Japanese carriers that are present are virtually denuded of planes. This is the sunset of the Japanese Navy, that's for sure. I should point out that there have been other Leyte Gulf games put out there. I think Avalanche Press did one, a huge one, some years ago. And I think Against the Odds magazine produced one called Imperial Sunset, if I'm not mistaken. One of the things that was exciting for me about playing Leyte Gulf was having all these new ships. In Midway, we got to memorize pretty well the order of battle. But with the Leyte Gulf, it's pretty big. And it was refreshing to get some American battleships for a change. Got the submarines in there, and little wee squadrons of 2, and a whole bunch of new ships like San Diego, Mississippi, Massachusetts, West Virginia, Chester, and so on. And I won't show them all, but there's a bunch in there. And I made up some task force counters too, because the stacks get a bit unwieldy. And that was the weather counter, which in the game it kind of moved, diagonally or up or down, and it would affect weather or the searchability in the hex. It had some cool rules to reflect Leyte Gulf. Now, if I thought the American ships were fascinating, the Japanese ships were just mind-blowing to me. Now, there's a lot of old friends we knew from Midway, like the Chikuma, Mogami, Haruna, Zuio, Kumano. They're all at Midway. But it was refreshing to get some new ships, like the battleship Yamashiro, and one of my favorites, Fuso, cruiser Takeo, Nashiro light cruiser, and of course the gigantic battleship Musashi. But I was always attracted to the Fuso for some reason. I think it's because of its pagoda masts and stuff. I mean, when you look at it from the side, that's battleship Fuso. I mean, how cool is that? These pagoda masts, they blow my mind. It was quite a battleship. And of course, the Japanese got their submarines too, in little flotillas of two boats. I think the I-168 is here. I just don't have it shown. That's the one that sunk the Yorktown at Midway. And you get the RO class submarines too. So the Japanese ships were just super cool. Now looking at it now, it just hit me that I made this variant before I even had a computer, because when I look at the counters and I go, holy cow, this is Letraset. Now for a generation that doesn't know what that is, before computers, Letraset was like decals you would buy at an art supply shop. So I had to hand cut out these counters, and yet I must have used the computer for the silhouette. Not sure how I did that. Probably it was an early computer. Heck, it could have been not an Atari. I think my first computer was a Radio Shack one. Anyway, the counters are a labor of love, and I had fun making them. Okay, there's some of the surface or battleboard counters. You can see Yamato, of course, and the sister ship Musashi. Interesting to note that at this time of the war, 44, you can see the desperate straits that the Japanese were forced to resort to, converting some of their battleships, like the Hyuga, into semi-aircraft carriers. A couple of big guns here in the front and a small landing strip at the back. Cruiser Maya, Here's another one of the hermaphrodites, the ice and the CVL Chitose, or Chitos. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. The Japanese names, though, are just, in my opinion, super cool. They almost remind me of the Klingon names in Star Trek. I just remembered one other Leyte Gulf that came out, and I think it was by Lou Coatney, and I think he called it Leyte Gulf, a naval chess game. And it was available for free online. Might still be available. You just download it, print out the pieces, and away you go. It was a small game, but I remember having great respect for it, and it was an inspiration for me to do this one. So, not much else to say about Leyte Gulf, except I like it. Don't play it hardly ever at all. Don't get two people together to play this kind of thing. I'd have to, well, there's not much to teach in the rules. It's virtually the game Midway. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you ever do make this game, you might enjoy it too. But I will warn you in advance, it's quite a labor of love to make the counters and everything. Although with computerization and stuff, you won't have to make the individual counters with Letraset like I did. Anyway, thank you for watching.